If God is truly all there is and you have existed eternally, even if only as a thought of God, then your ultimate origin must lie beyond this physical world. By definition, as a facet or spark of the divine, your essence transcends planetary bounds. According to the Sumerian lore of the Anunnaki, chiefly Enki and Alalu, these gods first fashioned workers to mine gold. When their initial creations proved too vulnerable to the planet's conditions, they returned to their genetic workshops. First they spliced in features for tool use, hands with opposable thumbs, then, to boost resilience in harsh atmospheres, they introduced porcine, pig, genes, hardy and adaptable, and later even canine traits to instill protective, pack-like behavior. Over time, interbreeding among these hybrids produced a spectrum of subraces, each endowed with differing strengths for labor or defense. Many argue passionately for beliefs they haven't fully verified. True co-creation, or coexistence, demands first seeking exact, confirmed knowledge, what is right by fact, not by assumption. As one teaching puts it, arguing over what you don't know leads only to confusion. Only when each party commits to fact-based understanding can a genuine shared reality and cooperation emerge. From a spiritual scientific perspective, life and death are states of vibration, energy that merely shifts form. As global vibrations intensify, through planetary cycles and technological change, our physical bodies become more resistant to permanent cessation. The zombie-like behaviors we see, severe trauma without immediate death, rapid mental breakdowns, reflect this shifting vibrational threshold. Early stages manifest as disorientation or craziness, and in extreme cases, individuals may appear alive yet act with feral aggression. God can be understood as the supreme excellence in any field. Michael Jordan is the god of basketball, just as someone might be the god of astrophysics. In the Exodus story, for example, when Moses' staff became a living serpent, it demonstrated a power beyond ordinary nature, a miracle. Even Pharaoh's magicians could replicate the transformation, suggesting there are different levels or types of magic or intent behind supernatural feats. Ultimately, God refers to that source of power or mastery which transcends ordinary explanation. Many traditions describe God as both infinitely loving and perfectly just. The idea is that God's mercy coexists with moral order. He grants free will so that love is genuine, but he also respects the consequences of our choices. In this view, hell is not a punitive furnace imposed capriciously, but the natural result of ultimate separation from the good, the state of being cut off from God's life and love. The imagery of unquenchable fire in Scripture often symbolizes profound spiritual pain, being forever estranged from the source of life, rather than a combustible flame. Because it's a metaphor for the soul's anguish, it doesn't follow the physical laws of thermodynamics. It's about the experience of loss, not about being incinerated. In classical theism, God is the uncaused cause or necessary being. He isn't part of the universe and therefore has no origin. Every effect within creation must trace back to something, but a fundamentally different category, an eternal, self-sufficient reality, anchors the chain. Calling him created misunderstands the premise that God exists by his own nature. While translations and manuscript variants exist, modern scholarship uses textual criticism and archaeological discoveries to reconstruct original writings with a high degree of confidence. Minor differences in wording don't overturn the core teachings. Moreover, the enduring coherence of these texts across communities and centuries argues for their substantial trustworthiness. Different cultures employ various rites, prayers, libations, chanting, or symbolic offerings, to honor and assist ancestors who may be bound by regret or attachment. The underlying principle is intercessory goodwill. By directing merit, remembrance, or compassionate intention toward them, we help their transition to a more peaceful state. Many traditions teach that aligning mind, body, and spirit unlocks innate healing capacities. Practices include meditation and visualization to focus vital energy, for example, green light imagery for regeneration, prayer or affirmation to cultivate positive intention and reduce stress, holistic lifestyle, whole foods, clean water, regular movement, to support natural resilience, and breathwork and subtle energy exercises, yoga, qigong, to clear blockages and restore balance. These methods aren't magic pills but tools for nurturing the conditions in which the body can heal itself. The so-called draconians or reptilian beings have already begun to infiltrate our world. They exist in another dimensional plane, and their covert operations have been ongoing for some time. Their ultimate goal is to reduce the global population from over 7 billion to about 500 million to conserve resources. They regard a large portion of humanity, those who consume without contributing, as useless eaters and plan to eliminate them accordingly. If 9-foot reptilians suddenly strode down our streets, panic and armed resistance would erupt. Throughout history, governments have worked to disarm populations in anticipation of such a threat. By suppressing visible extraterrestrial or interdimensional life forms, these beings can continue their agenda without provoking mass hysteria or organized defense. Every culture and individual emits a distinct vibrational frequency, referred to as ether. When people adopt the music, fashion, and behaviors of another culture, they shift onto that culture's vibrational wavelength. Those reptilian or ether-based beings target populations vibrating on lower frequencies, associated here with the Caucasian cultural norm. As more people emulate those norms, through music or lifestyle, they unwittingly make themselves more visible to these entities. In classical terms, ether is the fifth element, a subtle, luminous substance permeating all matter. Spiritually, it represents the vibrational aura of a living being. Human bodies radiate ether in varying intensities. Higher ether corresponds to brighter, more energetic auras. Ether also explains why our bodies maintain heat, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and why hair texture varies. The etheric vibration influences physical traits derived from our cosmic origins. In antiquity, skin diseases like vitiligo, measles, or ringworm were classified under leprosy. When white patches or scabs appeared, and especially if they spread, the afflicted were deemed ritually unclean and quarantined. Only when the lesions fully turned white, indicating the disease ran its course, could the person be pronounced clean again. Leviticus 13 details these criteria for purity. Planets are shaped by gravitational compression and rotational forces, trapping elements like gases and liquids within their mass. If a planet were hollow, it couldn't maintain its atmosphere or surface gravity, objects and inhabitants would simply float away. Scientific evidence shows planets are predominantly solid or liquid cores surrounded by atmospheric layers, not hollow spheres. The origins of the major human races are Aborigines, Australia. Among the earliest human branches, they migrated outward from Africa and Southeast Asia. Dravidians/Hindus, likely hybrids of ancient Dravidian peoples and later Asiatic migrants, explaining their distinct features, for example, darker skin, specific hair textures, and Caucasians, represent a later offshoot with a lower etheric vibration in this framework. According to esoteric traditions, interbreeding among these groups was restricted in ancient laws to preserve spiritual integrity. In the early Sumerian tradition, the Anunnaki were regarded as supreme beings whose hierarchy shifted depending on the school or cultural context. Within Sumerianism, Enlil and Enki, both sons of the sky god Anu, vied for prominence. Enki, whose name means ruler of Ki, or earth, was often seen as the benefactor of humanity, while Enlil was more aloof and sometimes antagonistic. As later traditions, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Abrahamic, evolved, the names and titles changed, but the underlying pattern, of two rival siblings and their offspring guiding or manipulating humanity, remained. Ancient scrolls describe primordial hydro-ancestral beings living beneath the ocean, some reaching heights of up to 7 or 9 feet. These water dwellers were said to have engineered subterranean tunnels and a planetary energy grid long before any terrestrial humanoids. Cataclysmic events, tidal waves, tsunamis, eventually cast them onto dry land, where their survivors mingled with emerging human lineages roughly 54,000 years ago. Early Anunnaki attempts to create replicating organisms involved splicing fragments of deity DNA into host cells. Disease genes thwarted these efforts until Enki collaborated with native African deity scientists, notably Fatah, to enclose DNA segments in circular structures, preventing degradation. Once stabilized, these gene circles, about 9,000 base pairs, could self-replicate. Later, structural proteins were added to guide cell differentiation, producing the hybrid blueprints for multiple human races. Spiritual evolution was likened to studying successive schools, first Sumerianism, with its pantheon of Anunnaki, then Egyptian, Abrahamic, Islamic, etc. At each stage, initiates fully immerse themselves in that belief system's terminology and paradigms before graduating to the next, shedding old names, for example Allah, Yahweh, as relics of prior grafting programs. True mastery comes when one recognizes the underlying cosmic principles beyond any single doctrine. The familiar 12 zodiac signs, Aries, Capricorn, etc., derive from later Caucasoid traditions. Earlier African systems spoke of 24 solar animals, each linked to ancestral intelligences. What was called lunar astrology in Mesopotamia became solar biology in Africa, emphasizing our direct energetic and genetic ties to the planets and stars as living, sentient entities. The word angel comes from the Latin angelus, meaning messenger. In most ancient accounts, any being descending from beyond Earth, whether gods, spirits, or advanced entities, is, by definition, extraterrestrial. Thus angelic encounters in scripture and myth describe visits from off-world intelligences bringing knowledge, judgment, or transformation. These beings were deemed supreme both for their origin in older, wiser worlds and for their role in shaping human destiny. Enki remains one of the most enduring figures from Sumerian myth, half-brother to Enlil, champion of human uplift, and master geneticist. Though his exact character varies by source, he consistently represents the fusion of alien technology and earthly stewardship, laying the foundations for the many branches of humanity that followed. In our teaching's terminology, a hermaphrodite combines two resonant frequencies, physically male but spiritually female, while a hermaphrodite is physically female but spiritually male. Both operate in double resonance, embodying both he and her. You can distinguish them by the prefix, he, versus her, once you know their physical sex. In practice, the Massachusetts called the first type a hermaphrodite and the second a hermaphrodite. It's valid to say that Ra, the Most High, manifests in different spaces of time or phases, each with its own nuance, Ra, Re, Ram, etc. Our master teacher explained that as humanity evolves, the same divine principle expresses itself differently, so what was called Ra in one era might be Re in another. Those specifics beyond that haven't yet been revealed. The idea is that Ra's essence moves through successive stages, matching the spiritual and vibrational needs of each age. All prayer is fundamentally an inward practice, directed first to the divine spark within ourselves and our ancestors, rather than outward to an external, unknown deity. We honor our personal lineage, mother, father, grandparents, and, in ritual, invoke the broader pantheon, the 99 sacred names or tones, only after first aligning and cleansing our own inner space. There is no power greater than your own true self. You are the center of your universe, the god of your reality. Your parents likewise govern their own universes. From our original state as supreme beings, able to speak and manifest at will, you have descended through stages, supreme human beast, by taking on denser bodies and habits. To reclaim your divinity you must purify body and mind, draw your inner divine out without dying, and thus reunite with the greater whole. Chance is merely unrecognized law. The universe and all its planes arise from an underlying divine intelligence of which you are an integral part. Mind, which perceives subatomic and etheric realms, exists outside the physical brain and testifies to higher creative forces beyond random matter. Belief means accepting something without direct confirmation. Knowledge arises when you've tested and confirmed through one, or more, of three means: personal experience, empirical evidence, or logical reasoning. Music is tone, vibration and resonance. Every culture, species and the planet itself vibrate at characteristic frequencies. Today's mainstream industry is governed by adversarial forces that select which resonances become hits, use music's power to manipulate emotion and even permit negative spirits to possess listeners, and favor sounds and images that enforce submission to a foreign cultural ideal rather than awaken our ancestral frequencies. Black people are targeted in Haiti because our oppressors, descended themselves from our original line, fear the divine potential within us. They seek to sever our ancestral link, suppress our God gene, and use us as an alternate energy source or food. By controlling information, ritual and media, they keep us disconnected from our true lineage and greatness. Our master teacher has long taught that truth will come and falsehood must perish. Since 1963, he has steadily revealed information that many tried to suppress. As scientific interest in ancient astronaut theories grows, once derided as fringe, scholars are now compelled to revisit humanity's true history. Early on, terms like UFO or unidentified aerial phenomenon were coined to classify the unknown, lending an air of authority while merely repackaging ancient knowledge. In contrast, our master teacher's method, rooted in question and answer dialogue, stimulates deeper understanding, connecting past civilizations, from Egypt's pyramids to the sophisticated Viking and Greek mythologies, with clear, historically accurate insights. For a complementary perspective, consider the documentary Pyramid Code, but always remember to measure these external sources against the profound clarity of our teacher's teachings. Just as the feline family, Felidae, contains multiple species, lions, tigers, domestic cats, the human lineage likewise comprises distinct species determined by genetic markers, not merely geography. Colonial era boundaries, for example, Nigeria, Uganda, reflect political divisions, not biological ones. Our teacher has revealed that the human genome includes over 200 extraterrestrial sequences alongside terrestrial DNA. Identifying the original 9 species requires deep expertise in genetics, expertise our master teacher possesses, since our shared P lineage ties them all together. While subsequent migrations and interbreeding introduce new subgroups, only a thorough genomic analysis, as he provides, can accurately delineate each original species. When the body enters sleep, the physical form rests while the spiritual form becomes more active. Dreams often process impressions from the preceding 24 hours. Anxiety over a barking dog, the rush of an ambulance, or unsolved problems can manifest as vivid chase scenes or tangled scenarios. Spiritually sensitive individuals may even experience out-of-body excursions or receive direct spiritual impressions, visions. In deep rest or meditation, we temporarily shut out the constant bombardment of light and sound frequencies, allowing our mind and body to recharge. Thus, sleep restores physical and mental energy even as our soul and spirit vibrate on higher planes, receiving guidance and renewal. Just as every region on Earth observes a different time zone based on longitude and the planet's rotation, the NWPU calendar and our global spread likewise involve multiple, non-synchronized timekeeping systems. The Earth's tilt, orbital mechanics, and leap year adjustments mean that no two locations share the exact same local time, so our communities naturally operate across various time zones. With no prior religious schooling, you may begin directly with the core actual fact series of books. The formal schools, Ansar, Holy Tabernacle Ministries, were designed for those undergoing intensive spiritual formation, requiring mental, physical, and spiritual readiness. They remain invaluable but are not mandatory for entering the path. Start with the foundational texts and exercises. As you grow in understanding and commitment, you may choose to engage in the advanced schools when you feel called. When people imagined a Hollywood spiritual master, they pictured someone sitting in a lotus position, levitating with incense in hand. But true mastery comes from discipline and order. Physically, this practice can be simple, but it demands mental rigor. If you have questions about Islamic, Hebraic, Jewish, or any schools of thought, there are elders and teachers who've studied for years and can guide you. Our master teacher often said that the students he trained would, in time, become masters themselves, not by holding his exact title, but by living through their own experiences and passing that knowledge on. Back when we first went out teaching, we couldn't rely on quick recollections or muscle memory. We memorized scriptures, quotes, and languages so thoroughly that when we were questioned, we could answer immediately and accurately. Today, many of us can quote at length just as he did 40 years ago, but he still receives ongoing revelations, and we remain his students. There aren't literally 9 fixed species in Africa. Instead, a vast array of peoples, Watusi, Kone, Osa, Zulu, Bantu, Fang, Gabaya, Bassa and so on, are better understood as tribes or ethnic groups. Historical mixing has produced countless subgroups and hybrid identities. To truly identify the distinct species, one would need to travel into remote villages, places like the Andaman Islands, home to the Jarawa, who have remained genetically insulated, and document tribes that haven't intermarried for centuries. Only then can you map how each group branched off, mixed, and evolved. On recent archaeological claims, like pyramids in Crimea said to be the oldest ever found, you must be cautious. Stone can't be carbon dated directly, so any age assigned based on pottery or nearby organic remains is provisional. Our own traditions and the Temple of Seti inscriptions trace pharaonic lineages back tens of thousands of years, 30,000, 300,000 years in some accounts. Mainstream scholars often dismiss these figures, but consistent finds of royal tombs and inscriptions suggest a much deeper history than the conventional 6,000-year model. As for the Russia-Ukraine situation and buried pyramids there, while those discoveries may be fascinating, they distract from the larger geopolitical turmoil. We're witnessing global uprisings, disrespect for leadership, and Russia is merely one part of that pattern. Prophecy aside, the best preparation for what comes next is personal. Strengthen yourself psychologically, spiritually, physically, and reconnect with our culture and language. Concerning concerns that Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, or Medicaid chip are mechanisms to implant chips in people, that's misinformation. Health insurance programs won't embed microchips in you. We live in a highly surveyed, technologized society. Smartphones and laptops record us, but registering for healthcare simply secures medical coverage. Instead of fearing a conspiracy, focus on real, practical steps, understand enrollment deadlines, compare plans, and choose what meets your needs. We don't need to be spooked by health programs. Use them wisely and stay informed. True freedom is an illusion. Everything costs money or labor, and breaking the law incurs penalties, whether fines or jail time. The US must compete with China, which leverages low-cost labor and sweatshops. By offshoring manufacturing, American companies boost profits, but then face copycat competition from the very factories they helped build. Honest labor isn't wrong. Every society needs workers. Like a lion protecting its pride, a nation rises when everyone plays their role. America grew wealthy on unpaid and underpaid labor, first enslaved Africans, then exploited immigrant workers, trillions in profit built on their backs. Other nations have since used the same model to overtake us. Today, private prisons and community centers employ inmates at pennies per hour. They build license plates, electronics, even car parts, generating profit for corporations, investors, and the government, which pressures private operators to keep beds filled. Mandatory community service is just another form of coerced, unpaid labor. Even minor offenses can land you years behind bars, where you work without real pay. Obamacare is a minor issue compared to this system of mass incarceration and forced labor. Many chronic illnesses, hypertension, kidney failure, liver disease, stem from dietary and lifestyle choices. We profit from sickness. Hospitals treat symptoms while selling more treatments, never cures. No technology can halt earthquakes, tsunamis, or hurricanes. Nature operates on its own terms. The government manufactures crises and scandals, painting individuals as monsters to justify harsh sentences, while private interests profit from their imprisonment. Voting does matter. When the populace mobilizes, officials take notice. Movements like the Tea Party or Occupy showed that collective action can challenge the status quo. Bill Clinton opened U.S. markets to China, setting the stage for massive offshoring. George W. Bush diverted attention with war. Obama inherited this legacy and struggled to reverse it. Free health care exists elsewhere. America's system thrives on chronic disease and repeat treatments, not on healing. Dialysis patients endure grueling treatments, often feeling stripped of their identity and vitality by the process. The master teacher warned decades ago of FEMA camps and forced implants that control commerce. Today's private prisons and licensing laws echo those predictions. You can't sell a loaf of bread without permits, inspections, and fees. Minor infractions can escalate into life sentences because the prison industrial complex depends on high occupancy. Mental liberation fuels physical and spiritual freedom. Our thoughts shape our reality. Strengthening the mind through willpower transforms every aspect of life. Liberation teaching began with religious frameworks to meet people where they were, then progressed to advanced doctrines that awaken the mind, first in the 1960s 9-Ball series, and now through updated lessons that suit our era's challenges. Pharmaceutical companies constantly invent new syndromes to sell drugs, often with serious side effects. This trend didn't exist in Africa before outsiders arrived. It's a global phenomenon driven by profit rather than genuine medical need. Historical research shows that while popular media portrays Africans as cannibals, cannibalistic practices have actually been most prevalent among Europeans, especially in Russia. The stereotype was deliberately applied to Africans to justify colonial narratives. True health comes from self-knowledge, understanding your own body, condition, diet and spiritual nature. Different species of humans thrive on different diets. One size does not fit all. Just as you wouldn't enter a lion's cage because its nature is to eat meat, you shouldn't ignore your own nature. Understanding both your physical and spiritual makeup keeps you from walking into harm's way. Enslavement began by severing Africans from their language and spirituality. Once disconnected from ancestral practices and tongues, people lost self-knowledge and became mentally captive, essentially alive but spiritually dead. Many continue to worship the religion of their former oppressors, praying to keep them enslaved. True liberation requires rejecting that inherited faith and reclaiming one's own spiritual traditions. The notorious bath salts attacks are a distraction. Similar behaviors have occurred under different substances. These episodes have fueled a zombie mania in popular culture, but the underlying issue is spiritual and vibrational. People are being driven into Walking Dead states by external frequencies, not just drugs. Experiments like the Large Hadron Collider, 2008, reportedly open gateways to lower dimensions, allowing hostile entities to possess humans. Such possessions have always existed, in churches, voodoo rituals or concerts, triggered by certain sound frequencies. Factory-processed meat, the so-called pink slime, often contains pulverized animal remains, bones, cartilage, even decomposed tissue, ground into a paste. This industrial byproduct is then reshaped into patties and sold at major chains, effectively feeding us a form of human-like flesh. Interdimensional entities can't materialize in our frequency. Instead, they manipulate harmonics, through music, tone and ritual, to manifest among us. Performers who sell their souls unwittingly become conduits, enabling these beings to occupy human bodies. Since darker-skinned people are especially susceptible to low frequencies, the only protection is psychic self-defense, maintaining one's own vibration through diet, language, culture and spiritual practice, rather than adopting those of the oppressors. The so-called Dendera zodiac is an ancient Egyptian star map predating Hellenistic influence. It depicts the constellations, planets, and even a now-lost planet, Maldek, whose remnants form today's asteroid belt. All of this knowledge originates from Tamri, ancient Kemet, long before later civilizations documented the heavens. Originally, Kemetic calendars comprised 19 months of 19 days each, with 5 intercalary days. When foreign powers imposed the 12-month Gregorian system, they renamed and discarded months, misaligned the days, and inserted daylight saving manipulations to obscure true timekeeping. For example, October, octo equals 8, became the 10th month, November, novem equals 9, became the 11th, and December, decem equals 10, became the 12th. Such distortions serve to disrupt our ancestral connection to cosmic cycles. Before the Common Era, BCE, is simply a count descending toward the traditionally recognized birth of Christ, year 1 CE. Imagine a number line with 0 at Christ's birth. Years before are negative and thus listed in reverse order. For example, 400 BCE precedes 300 BCE. It's a mathematical convention, not a true reflection of time's flow. The Nebta Playa, often mistaken for the Cone calendar, is the earliest known celestial chart, engraved by Neolithic star keepers along the Nile. It served multiple functions, tracking solstices and equinoxes via shafts aligned to Orion and Sirius, logging precessional cycles, the 24,000-year wobble of Earth's axis, and mapping star motions across vast epochs, records extending 54,000 years and beyond. These precision astronomical tools reveal a sophistication that modern calendar systems have largely erased. Our earliest ancestors existed as ethereal, interdimensional beings in the omniverse. They fell into material form by condensing from a gaseous, etheric state into water, where simple life evolved, single cells to amphibians to reptiles. From this stage emerged the Ogdoads, represented as frog-headed and snake-headed deities. These then gave rise to the Enneads, the first true mammals. This sequence isn't strictly linear but cyclical. The same divine personalities reappear in different cosmic ages, just as Adam Ray creates creation through his own self-emanation. The Yoruba pantheon inherited certain deities and ritual forms from ancient Egyptian, and earlier Mesopotamian, practices, transmitted via Arabian intermediaries. In Egypt and across the Middle East, these deities were linked to elemental forces and required precise ancestral lineage to invoke safely. Only those born into the proper bloodline should open those portals, elsewise one risks spiritual dissonance or harmful pretender entities. While often attributed to later indigenous groups, Poverty Point, and even the Georgia pyramids, bear symbolic parallels to Old World temple mound architecture, spirals, raised platforms, serpent motifs, that echo ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian iconography. In North America, these were built by the mound builder cultures, who wove in shared symbols of cosmic order. Every branch of service serves its nation, but joining is a binding contract that places your life and body under another's command. Before enlisting, whether Air Force, Navy, Army, Marines, etc., do a deep background check, understand the chain of command, the medical protocols, mandatory inoculations, unknown experimental exposures, deployment risks, and the loss of personal autonomy. Remember that uniforms aren't just clothing. They signal full alignment with an institution's values and may limit your ability to act independently. Effect means the real consequences, both karmic and experiential, of our intentional actions. A person who lives selfishly and brutally will be forced to re-experience those harmful deeds. One who lives virtuously ascends to higher realms where thought immediately manifests reality. In our tradition we live by conscious confession, self-declarations of integrity, instead of external commandments, making us our own judges of right and wrong. The Ogdoads, 4 male, 4 female, embody the primordial forces that arose from the chaotic waters of noon. They personify the transition from cosmic potential to living form, gas to liquid to solid, and represent each major phase of evolution, from watery proto-creatures to reptilian landwalkers. Acknowledging them is like honoring one's grandparents. They are the foundation of all subsequent life, and knowing their story anchors us in our own cosmic heritage.